hear a lot and read a lot about this surging international thirst for craft beer, particularly for brands brewed here in the States. But I've really never had an opportunity to actually cover what's happening in markets outside of the U.S., so I've always had to assume that craft beer sales were growing in global markets, but I haven't been there to see for myself. And instead of embarking on a long and expensive journey to go find out for myself, which, by the way, if anybody would like to help foot the bill on that in here, I would love that. I decided to bring a few folks here to Brooklyn to share their experience building brands in global markets and talking about what's happening with craft from an international point of view. So today we have three folks who I respect tremendously, and I very, very much appreciate them giving up their time and coming to join us today, even though we're running behind and even though this is the last panel of the day. Jeff Carefoote is the owner of Amsterdam Brewing Company in Toronto, Canada. He's got a ton of experience from his days at Molson and Miller Brewing prior to purchasing Amsterdam Craft Brewery in 2002. Jasper is the founder of London's Camden Town Brewery, which launched in 2010, scaled rapidly, and just at the end of last year was acquired by Anheuser-Busch InBev. And speaking of AB InBev, also joining us today is Jerome Pellaud, and he is the VP of their Global Craft and Specialties division, and that's an integral part of what they call their ZX Ventures Incubator for some of their global small craft brands. So if those guys are here, come up and join me. We'll have a beer, and we'll talk about what is happening with craft beer internationally. Big round of applause. Can we get these guys some beers? It's almost it's 4:50. These guys need a drink. Speaking of that, I'll wait till you guys get beers and we'll cheers. Thank you for coming here today. So let's jump right in. What's happening with craft in Toronto, Mr. Carefoote?
Craft's coming along. It's not anywhere near the development that it would be in the U.S. or even for that matter the rest of Canada. Maybe it's a 5 share. It's growing. It's got more presence, but it's not. A lot of good trends are in place, but it's not happened to the same extent it has here.
And maybe just for those who might be unfamiliar with Amsterdam, talk a little bit about kind of what Amsterdam is all about and what you guys are doing in Toronto.
Amsterdam's 30 years old this month, and it was started out as a brew pub, and then it became 2 brew pubs, and in 2002 I bought it and turned it into more of a production-type brewery. And I'd spent a fair amount of time here and saw the trend coming, and basically I'd worked for the large brewers, and in Canada in particular, and they were really not paying much attention to the consumer at all. Very frustrating. Everything was in a standard package, a standard price, goes to the same distribution system, so there was a chance for some variation, but having said that, it's a very difficult thing to do. So, but anyways, we've been chipping away at it, and we should hit 50,000 hectoliters this year if the sun keeps shining.
And I always forget I got to switch my brain to hectoliters now.
That would be about 44,000 barrels.
And Jasper, how about your experience selling beer in London, and maybe introduce to those who are unfamiliar what's up with Camden Town?
Yeah, I mean, hey. Hello. Yeah, let me take that one. Cheers. Hello. Yeah, I think the craft scene in England's exploding. You know, it's hey man, do I get one? Yeah, and I mean, I don't know what the actual number of percentage of the overall market is, but it actually is a growth market. It's exceptional. I think across the whole country, craft is growing at 50% year on year in a market that's down 3% as beer market's down, but craft is up 50%. 66% in London growth at the moment, with 33% across the country. So, yeah, it's definitely taken off, and I think. The facts are incredible. I think over 35% of every licensed venue in the country has got 1, if not 2, pieces of craft across the whole country, which is something staggering that's happened in the last 5 to 6 years. Wow. And I guess for us, we started 6 years ago when there was 3 brewing companies in the city. There was Meantime Brewery, Fuller's, and Budweiser, and now there's 102 breweries in the city. It's exceptional, right? Incredible. Most of them are great friends of ours, and everyone likes to say, like, what did Camden do to the scene? I think we populated the scene, so I think there's, like, if not one or if not two people from our brewing company in those facilities. So we started 5 years ago with me and a friend brewing beer in the basement of the first pub that I owned. Now there's 132 of us working in the brewing company. We went from zero to gangbusters in a second, and I think without a lot of thought, we just got on with it. It was true to our thoughts. We just did what we thought was right, and to grow was right, but we grew at the right pace for us. We had a lot of good people working for us. And this year, I think we'll top out at just over or just under 100,000 hectolitres in 5 years, which is something that we reflect on quite a lot, but we've done it really, really well. We've hired great people. We've bought the best equipment we could possibly afford. We'd mortgaged everything: cats, dogs, houses, lost partners, went de facto, everything. We've done everything, and we've done everything right. And I think the reason for our growth and success is because we've done it right. We've won a cluster of awards internationally because we really, we're a lager brewery. 90% of our volume is lager, from 10% down to 4%. We barrel age them, sour them, fuck them up, do everything with them, right? And I think, but 70% of our beer is a beer that people like, and I think that's the big thing with craft in the UK, or definitely for us, is that we're a distinct brewing company. We know exactly who we are. We know our values of who we are. But we're not scared to make a beer that people want to drink, and I think that's the big thing, that we never came out to be a niche product. We came out to be a distinctive product, a great made product, but we didn't come out saying, we didn't want to convert the unconvertible. We wanted to give beer to people who wanted to drink beer, and that's what we've done.
Right. Jerome, you don't have a specific market, any one specific market, but you visit a lot of markets. What are some areas of the entire world that some of these countries that you travel to, that you're noticing some particularly interesting trends in craft?
Yeah, no, I think it's a fascinating time right now, right? So it's happening everywhere, and if you look in the big cities around the world, right? So you almost find yourself in Brooklyn while you're in one street in Seoul, South Korea. The people travel. And there is obviously a big demand for diversity, whether it's in food or in beer, especially, right? So we definitely see a lot of the IPA, or if you go in South America, it's IPA, right? So they ask for an IPA. They don't necessarily know what it is, but they start to really get into it. And the trends beside the IPA, I think what is very exciting is that we can start to see, especially I think in countries which are that have deep roots in food culture. So Korea for sure is one, Italy, Mexico, or even China, of course. People start to really mess around with the styles. They don't have probably a little bit of the stiffiness of the European tradition. They just get inspired by the US, but then why not put bitter melon in it, or a different spice, or Sichuan pepper, or whatever. And I think that's great. That's
right.
If everybody can come up with their own brewing school, not just making an IPA everywhere.
And when we were all talking before this panel, you had mentioned how much further along some of these areas of the world are in terms of just their food culture, and how that's impacting kind of the innovation and the exploration within beer. Are there any trends that you're noticing internationally that you think could actually play here in the U.S.? Are there something that U.S. brewers should be paying attention to, just from a style perspective?
Yeah, you mentioned the food, Chris, and I think one of the learning looking outside of the U.S. is there is so much more opportunity in food pairing, but the panel this morning discussed that instead of fighting or looking too much internally, look what they did in Italy or in Mexico, where it's basically a hard spirit, right? A tequila and mezcal country, or in Argentina, which is a wine country. They drink much more wine than beer. So people don't look within beer. They just try to, get market share from tequila or from wine. So it's a totally different approach. So there is so much room there, to elevate the beer and also go beyond the burger and the traditional pub fare, right? So. And you go in Rome now. Rome is 10% craft beer, but 15 years ago it was 100% almost wine, right? So it's really exciting.
And you guys just bought a very popular brewer in Italy.
Yeah, exactly. Birra del Borgo, which basically single-handedly almost did that, started this trend in Rome.
Right.
And he was not the only one, of course. You have Baladin in the north, and now there are more than 500 breweries there. So,
Italy, it's coming up. Jeff, from your point of view, is there an opportunity to build a global craft brand? Are there brands that are already sort of on the path down or going down the path of being a global craft brand? And if so, what are those brands, and what's the opportunity to be the sort of global craft beer?
Well, I'm not as familiar with Europe, although I've traveled there recently. We don't really even have one in Canada, a global craft beer. And just listening to the panel this morning, quite honestly, made me wonder if we even know what a craft beer is anymore. Authentic. It started out as it was authentic, it was local, it was relevant. Those things don't travel too far. So I'm sort of pessimistic, although having said that, we've got ABI in the market, and they've put a heck of a push on Goose Island, and it kind of shows up everywhere. I don't know if people really understand it, quite honestly, but it's got a wild presence. I'm told they're going to build a number of tasting rooms and, I guess tied houses. And so they certainly have the ability to do it, but it's going to take somebody like that who has the ability to enter the markets. I think, as I was telling you earlier about some of the other craft brewers that have come into Ontario, it's very difficult with the price, with ability to have fresh product. Right now you got a dollar issue. Dollar's worth 30 cents less or whatever. So, I think some of the brands have strong positionings probably that they might travel if you think the way a Corona's traveled or something. But it's probably got to come out of geography. And when you water it down and you make it, like Goose Island's being made in Canada. I don't know. I worked on Foster's years ago, and we imported it from Australia, and then we decided Foster's had bought part of Molson, so said, hey, we can make this in Canada. It's such a, the beer's fresher, a lot cheaper, we can do draft. It was a wonderful business idea. And it turned out to be a great business idea for a period of time. And then it wasn't, then it becomes known. It's not sort of what it represented itself as. And so I'm somewhat skeptical. I wouldn't say it's impossible, because clearly, ABI has tremendous resources, but beyond them and I don't know, Heineken possibly, maybe Lagunitas, I don't know. But the style of beer is not, I can't imagine a pale ale like Lagunitas being terribly relevant in Mexico. I just don't see it. That's me.
Jasper, do you think that there's an opportunity for a global craft brand, and do you have aspirations of Camden Town maybe one day being that?
I think there is absolutely the ability to be a global craft brand. I think Brooklyn does a perfect example of that. They play really well in our market. They don't come and try and take over the market. They bring Brooklyn that we don't have to our market, and they do a damn good job of it. They have the mash. I don't know if there's anyone here from Brooklyn, but it's inundated. You can't get into the bloody thing for 4 days, and they've joined our market really well. Lagunitas have got maybe half a dozen reps in Camden, in the country, if not in London itself. So I think, it's as long as you stay true to who you are, true to Lagunitas, true to Brooklyn, I think you can definitely take your brands globally, definitely. Do we have aspirations to go internationally? We have a big aspiration for everything. Before we joined ABI, that we have it in the brewery. It says we want to be the most loved craft lager in the whole world. That doesn't mean the biggest. It means the most loved, right? So, and we'll continue to do that. Does that mean we want to go globally? I'm not really sure. If the opportunity to take who we are globally, because it's accepted into a market, absolutely. Because I think we'd only want to take Camden to the market. We're not going to go there and water something down and come up with something new. We'd take who we are, and if people like that in a new market, then fantastic. But so I think it's up to the market and up to consumers. But I think there's definitely the ability to take it internationally.
And Jeff, if I sort of understood what you were trying to convey, it's that the localness or the sort of authentic place of a beer, if you're producing it, like you said for Foster's, in a different locale, it gets lost and it's a tougher sell. But I guess the traditional sort of, especially hop-forward craft beers, are really not built to travel in the way that consumers desire them to taste today.
If source is a part of authenticity, then I think it's a challenge. If London isn't part of Camden Town as it travels, is it still the same thing? And I honestly don't know the answer. I'm skeptical, I guess is what I'm saying. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just somewhat skeptical about it. I mean, I think of why our business is relevant to the consumers in Southern Ontario, Toronto in particular. It's because we're there, because we're part of the community. All the things the guys were talking about today on building their businesses, I don't know how you duplicate that, when you go to new markets. That if you have a very specialized product, possibly. But again, I think tastes are so varied from the West Coast. I mean, in West Coast of Canada, it's different craft beer market than it is in Ontario and Quebec.
Right.
Quebec, who knows what it is, but it's just very different. I mean, so it's very difficult to do, and I'm sure. I have worked internationally, and country to country, it's a big challenge. So again, not that it can't be done, but I don't think the world's waiting for it, I guess is what I'd say.
Right. Jerome, when you visit other markets around the world, is there a strong desire or, sort of consumer desire for a locally crafted product, a locally made beer? Obviously, a place like Italy, certainly that exists. But other markets that maybe aren't as quite as evolved in the craft space, is there a demand for a locally crafted product like there is here in the U.S.? And if not, is there an opportunity to capitalize on that?
Yeah, so I definitely think there is a big aspiration for local products, and it's also lots of entrepreneurs in every market. They see what's happening in the US or in UK, 1,900 breweries in UK right now. So lots of opportunity for entrepreneurs and great brewers everywhere, right, to open their own businesses. So there is definitely a big demand for that. But at the same time, in many of these markets, they look at the US and to European brand to large extent as well for the moment, and it's very aspirational, So they want both. So I think we are at a moment. Which one would be more important? I think the local one will always be more important. They can also be more reactive, more impulse with the local demand. While like Jeff just mentioned, when you export, okay, it's like. It takes some time, it's refrigerated and everything, So there is, I think, an opportunity for both. I'm not exactly sure in every market where the balance would be.
Right. What role is AB going to play in that? Either, plugging in a global craft brand or working to establish the actual authentic local beer company? So
Jasper just mentioned, what we are doing is helping him, supporting him grow his brand. First and foremost in the UK, you're still mostly, I think, present in London, right? So there is still a lot of room. And yes, we have launched Goose Island now, just last month in China and Korea. Great feedback, but it's very early. Would they love IPA and stick to it? How many brands would people, gravitate around in China? It's hard to tell.
Right.
Yeah, I think just to reiterate what Jerome's doing, they've with us in Camden in the UK, they've invested in us to grow. We're in a growth market that this year we're building the newest facility in the city that's ever seen. You think England's got this incredible history of brewing, but actually brewing really kind of sucks in England at the moment. It's been in decline for 28 years, so no investment, not great people. Everyone we're hiring is coming from the outside, and ABI have come to us and. We're building a huge facility right in the middle of town. That's a massive investment for ABI. But for us to focus locally, there hasn't been a conversation yet about taking us internationally. I think if the market, asks for us to come to a different market, then who better to take it to a foreign market than would be ABI. So I think when that happens, then we're in really good hands.
Right. So we know that the U.S. is obviously a sort of leader in craft at the moment. Certainly with respect to the export business as well. We see exports rising, U.S. craft exports rising. We hear so much about this demand for U.S. craft beer all around the world. So I would say that U.S. is definitely leading the craft beer movement. And depending upon whatever definition you're using, we've still only gotten to about 12% market share here in the US, right? So the amount of work required to get to that point was tremendous. And for a long period of time, it was a collective group of entrepreneurs that really sort of banded together and relentlessly pursued that growth for 20, 30 years. And it took a long time. And they rolled up their sleeves. It took patience. I mean, all the things we've been talking about today. And there was a lot of education that needed to happen. So, I guess sort of my long-winded way of asking, is it possible to recreate that kind of phenomenon on a global scale, even if it might be somewhat manufactured, even if you're looking at the U.S. for the sort of inspiration to recreate that? And that's for everybody.
I'm sort of trying to understand the question.
No, maybe I can start. No, I think that's the beauty. That's why I'm so excited. I think I have the dream job, like all of us have their own dream job, I think, being in the industry. It doesn't need to be manufactured because it's already happening, right? You go in Mexico, it's 0.5% of the market only, so it's barely existing.
Right.
But when you start to make it your focus, then you see it's there, it's vibrant, and it's just about to explode, right? And how long it will take to get to 12%, maybe it never gets to 12%, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure it will take less than 30 years, so it took more or less 30 years here, right?
And I guess I'll explain that by saying, when I say manufactured, I mean, there was a serious uprising of craft brewers here in the U.S. that created what it is today. Now, if in Mexico it's 0.5%, and AB is coming in and saying, we recognize an opportunity to build craft here, that isn't as authentic as, 500, unique, independent Mexican breweries starting up and doing the work themselves. So both is happening. We want to play a role, and there is already more than 250 brewers in Mexico, so this is already happening, right? So we have, for instance, we have acquired Cucapa, so we have also a brand there to start and better understanding the market. We have launched Goose Island as well last year, right? So and there is space because when you are 0.5% of the market, which is a very big beer market, there is definitely room for more than one player to play. And but the two things that is very important for us, it's the quality. Making sure that we bring the best possible quality beer. And then education, it was mentioned before. There it's new, right? Hop is not necessarily even known what is a hop. So if you go there, there is a lot of education to be done in the right way, right? In a fun, interactive way, both for the consumer, but also for the customer. Right. Jasper, what are your thoughts? Ability to create or recreate what's happened here in the U.S. and replicate it in other markets?
Oh, listen, we emulated America. Let's not be, when we started beer, like I said before, it really sucked in England. And, we had Brooklyn and Sierra coming in and kicking goals with Goose Island and Honkers and stuff like that. And they were awesome. They were great beers. They looked great. And there were people telling great stories. But then if you went to a brewery, one, you probably couldn't get into it in England. And two, the beer was, so old and kind of boring. And I think, so, we were inspired by America. So there is something sexy that is going around the world based on what's happened right in front of us and right in front of all these people that are sitting here. We're trying to recreate the American craft market. I think we're going about it in different ways. I think actually craft will grow faster in other countries because you guys did the hard work for everybody else. You made it acceptable. You made it a mainstream thing. I think it will go mainstream in England before it goes mainstream here. I'm pretty confident that'll happen because it's acceptable as a beer style. It's accepted to do it. It's accepted to drink these new brands. And I think, we have a really interesting new MD who's just joined us, and he was at a fabulous drinks company, which, again, when there was only, say, one player, American Tropicana was like the big player in English fruit drinks. And they went in there and they changed the game, and they were a small juice company, and now they're one of the biggest in the world, because they did it differently, because they reinvigorated something that was a classic. Their biggest selling juice isn't something upside down, back to front. It's bloody orange juice, but they put a new nice label on it and they told a great story. And I think that's what it's brands, it's talking. It's not, beer is beer. Everyone loves beer. We don't need some crazy occasion to drink it or it has to be upside down and back to front. I love beer. I love drinking it every day, 7 days a week. Probably too much of it. But we don't. I guess what we've done differently is we're not making it elite. We're not making it something you don't have to make it rate beard or this or that. We're actually making it for people to come to. So we're giving it actually everything's. There's lots more gateway beers where we are, where you can actually get involved really quickly from a straight up and down lager or to a straight up and down pale ale. We're making it accessible so that people, and I think that's why we're seeing share happen a lot faster, because we're giving beers that people want to drink.
Chris, I'd just add to it, though, that I think one of the things that we haven't talked about today is just the consolidation of the industry, and where, these companies that you're competing with or have to work through are massive, and they control the markets much more than they, you get outside of the U.S. and most of the markets are controlled, very tightly by one or two companies.
Right.
They don't give you the opportunity. Like, you're not going to get it unless you work with them, and that's why I think ABI could do it, because they have the ability. Maybe Heineken. After that, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure. You need that access. You need to be able to get it on the shelves. You need to be able to do the deals with the bars and stuff. I mean, say we've got Goose Island going crazy, and there's some, Sierra Nevada, Anchor Steam. You can go through a bunch of great brands. They're not making a dent, but it's access. And it's in the context of the world shrinking and global beer suppliers, I think it's going to be a real challenge.
And that's something that you faced yourself with Amsterdam and Toronto, is just, trying to fight against some of that access to market, correct?
Yeah, I mean, they own the retail system. They control 80% of the retail beer sold, Molson Coors and ABI. They own 100% of that system. They basically control the government, in terms of how the rules get made, the regulations. You got some of the same issues here with distributors and their power and all those things. You shut a lot of people out. So getting that opportunity to grow a brand, and it's more intense in other countries, Mexico. I mean, America's pretty fair.
Right.
But in Canada, for example, they can bring in and do basically whatever they want very, very quickly at a very good price. So, Stone's going to be selling beer for, $500 a keg, and I think you can buy Goose Island for $220. I know that's way more than you pay here, by the way, but that's roughly what the costs are. So, you need to be, I don't know what brand could be that fantastic that it could overcome all the barriers to really gain any critical mass. With the right channels and with the right partners, I think you could see it, though.
So how are you going to do it at Amsterdam?
One account at a time. I honestly don't know how we will. I mean, we just go out and try to have a local relevance, there's always room for somebody else, but when you start talking about taking your business on a massive scale, I'm kind of realistic. Locally, can we survive? I think so. I think we can survive and grow. But, you have to, like a lot of the guys have said, you really got to focus what you do 2 or 3 things, and you have to be realistic about your expectations.
All right. Jerome, maybe you could just briefly explain to folks here about ZX Ventures. Talk to everyone about what that is. I know it's still a bit under the radar. It hasn't been talked about much, but it's a division. It's an incubation division within Anheuser-Busch. What are you guys doing with ZX Ventures?
So it's under the radar, not on purpose at all. We had the incubator of ABI, right, created in February last year. So, and we just got Sam, our PR person, joined the team 2 months ago. So that's why I guess it's a bit under the radar, because we were just busy, building the team in the different places. So what is ZX Ventures, right? So it's to have a limited number of people that can, breathe, live, dream, sleep, thinking about the small thing. That for us is everything, right? But in the grand scheme of things, this is small. Like if you look in the context of AB InBev, so ZX Ventures, there are different departments. So one of them is craft and specialties, where I'm working, and then I have my colleague taking care of e-commerce. Also something that not very big here for alcoholic beverages, for instance. But in some other markets, like UK in particular, that's the most advanced, and it's also growing fast in other markets. So, but this is something that might be a distraction because it's not yet big. So let's put a bunch of people with very different profile, trying to figure out what to do and where it's going. And then we have also exploration with another colleague of mine, where we are looking at, okay, long-term, what could be the next thing, right? I'm working closely with him. And then we have also retail businesses, because in some markets, if we open brew pubs or some other type of retail, we also want to figure out, because at the end it's about bringing awesome beer experiences to consumer, anytime, anywhere. So you need to kind of figure out distribution, last mile, e-commerce, online, retail experience. It's all in all. My team is just providing great beer, and my colleagues are taking care of the rest.
So in sort of the U.S., it would be the global sort of high end for craft in at least one piece of it.
Yeah, more or less, yes.
Right. That being said, how long is AB willing to fund something like that? Because you said it is very singularly focused on the very small, tiny things that they're probably not paying attention to, and that's part of the reason why it was created, so that there are individuals within the organization to focus on it. But how long can something like that exist? And I guess, how is it serving the marketplaces around the world from a craft perspective? What are you guys doing to encourage the craft growth as ZX Ventures?
No, that's definitely a long-term commitment, because it comes from the board of the company. They said, like, okay, let's, select a few number of people, recruit people also with totally different profile. We have long-term objectives, so I don't know if I will be there at the end of this term, but for sure the business is still going to be there, because also ABI can gain from the agility that we are experiencing every day, and the second part was how we can help.
How can ZX Ventures itself just better contribute to growing craft internationally?
No, and it's, working with Jasper, for instance, is something great.
Besides buying breweries everywhere, I guess.
No, that's not.
Let me help.
Sorry, that was the obvious one.
No,
well, we can go buy them.
That was too easy. But listen, I think, we're 120 employees working our ass off 24 hours. We brew 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now we have this collection of people who are just as dialed in as we are, that we can talk to. We can go into these places that we could never go to before. We can have a wort stream split into 10 different varietals, chuck different yeast propagations into it, and shit, we've had pale ale that we've been trying to make better for 2 years. We've now got 10 varieties under the same mechanism working beautifully, like, to have a look. So we can go through, I guess, working with, there's just some real legends in this team that are just incredible. For us, it's been, before it was like we'd be at loggerheads trying to sort something out or find something, or how do we do this? Now I can ask Jerome, and Jerome's got someone in this market who can talk to me about it, or I can find this fruit somewhere, or, it's just an incredible, it's like a book of knowledge that we just dial into at any time.
Right. So a couple audience questions here, and then I think we'll wrap up the day and go enjoy some beers. But, I wanted to get everybody's opinions on this, and some good questions that came through. So I'll start with Jeff. Does the international consumer have a different perception of imported U.S. craft versus the American craft that is brewed locally? So in this case, it would be, Stone Berlin versus Stone shipped to Europe. Some of these international plays that we're seeing.
I don't really know.
I guess the real question is the German consumer, or do you feel like an international consumer, will they accept an American craft beer if an American craft brewer goes and expands in that market?
Well, we just had a number of Germans over because we installed a new brew house, and they were there for a couple of months, and they're not very forgiving. What is this shit? We don't do that. They didn't like the pretzels. They didn't like anything. So I don't really know. It's this whole local taste thing. I think Jerome knows more about it than I do. I think if you can fit in and stretch it or move it a bit, reinvent it, I doubt it. But, after a while they came around a bit on some things. But, they just didn't care really for pale ales. They just didn't want that. So, maybe Jasper's got a chance because they do like the lagers. So I think it's got to fit within the local sort of lexicon or taste spectrum that consumer's used to. I'm not saying over time you can't stretch it, and move it over time, but I think coming right in out of the gate will be tough. It'll be interesting to see what Stone does over there.
Right. And then final question here from the from the audience is basically this idea that Trappist beers have sort of already been the international craft brand that have gone out and expanded and talked to a global consumer. So do the American brewers have that same opportunity with IPA being sort of synonymous with America?
Yeah, and by the way, there are new Trappists every other month. Now they even launched some IPA Trappist.
Yeah, in Massachusetts we have a Trappist brewery.
No, and I was at the tasting with all the Trappists last year in Leuven, right? And they were starting to debate, like, should we only stick to like double and quadruple and triple? And an Italian one was using eucalyptus, the monk putting eucalyptus in the brew. Good beer. I don't know if it's a Trappist. It's on the label at least. But this being said, no, I do believe, for sure, overall, I think if you ask everywhere, like what's the more like American craft beer style, they would say IPA or IPA, I'm pretty sure. But I truly hope that the world will be more interesting than just lager and IPA, right? Otherwise, I think there is room for like great wheat beer, great amber ale, and cream ale, everything.
Right. All right, final question for you guys, and then we'll reveal the Start a Brewery Challenge winner. I know people are interested in hearing that, and I'll go kind of around the horn here. What is one thing that American craft brewers can learn from the international craft brewers, and vice versa? What is one thing that you guys have learned from the American craft brewers? And I'll start with Jeff.
I think the thing that I learned the most from American craft brewers was just, if you're going to be successful, you have to have that commitment to quality. It's not just okay to be different. You got to be good. And I think that, and more recently here, I've just heard in every conference I've been to, the emphasis on quality. And I think the quality has improved tremendously in the last number of years. So I think if you don't start out with a quality product, it's a pretty tough hill to climb. That'd be my one takeaway.
One thing you're going to teach U.S. craft brewers?
One thing I'm going to teach U.S. craft brewers? Canada's a bad place. I wouldn't really know what to teach them. I don't. I mean, I really wouldn't.
You've been in the business a long time. There's got to be
Yeah,
something
no, I
up
mean,
there.
well, I think it's being realistic about what you can and can't do and where you make your investments. It was said numerous times again, I think your investments are always better closest to home. So if you got a wildly successful, like any companies I've been involved with when we went international, it's because we didn't know how else to make money. We maxed out our facilities, we maxed out the marketplace. We were just fighting with somebody over share, and it was ridiculous, so we took our money and went somewhere else. We're all so far away from that, in my opinion, into what the opportunities are. That's why, unless it's a company, and I'm not picking on ABI, but they're the best. Unless they do it, I don't know how anybody else is really going to do it. I mean, I applaud Stone, but I think eventually they're going to realize there's a better place to put your money.
All right. Jasper, one thing you've learned from the U.S. brewers and one thing you'd like to teach U.S. brewers?
I think the biggest thing for me was brands. I think some of the people that have inspired us have always been strong to their brand, where they came from and what they do, and they've never changed that. Brooklyn, and Odell's have always been exactly who they are when I met them 10 years ago, and the same as what they are today. But I'm too young to give anyone education, or too young in brewing to give, probably too old to be wise enough, but too young in brewing to give anyone in this country any advice on what they're doing, because you're doing it fucking well, right? It's amazing over here. I love coming here. I'm going home too early tonight, so it's keep doing what you're doing, because I love coming here.
You've done something right, though. I mean, you managed to build and scale a brand and sell it to the world's largest brewery, so you did something right.
Yeah, I don't know. We don't have enough time to reflect, right? We are doing a lot of things right. We've got an awesome team. What do? We hire brilliant people, right? People who are much, much, much better than I am, and I'm inspired by the people who are around me, and I work hard to make sure that their life at work is just as inspiring as mine. So I think that's what I do. So hire great people. That's it.
All right. And Jerome, one thing you've learned from the U.S. Marketplace and one thing you want to teach the U.S. marketplace?
So I think the biggest learning, and I mentioned previously, is like the US, a lot of time got inspired by Belgium and the European style, but put a twist on it and reinvented things, you know, like, so there should be no rules, right? Just creativity. I think that's great. And what the US, I don't know what they can learn because they are really leading the way, right? But I think looking at going after wine, going after spirit, you know, like that's a big space to, you know, to get more room for growth.
Right.
I think that's
So pay attention to your investments, hire great people, and take off the blinders. That's what U.S. brewers should be doing. All right? Well, thank you guys so much for joining me. I appreciate it. Cheers.